Welcome to the broadcast, everybody. I'm going to dive right in with some questions regarding Harry, Meghan, William and Catherine, but we will begin with a rather jolly question regarding William and Sophie. This is from Ivy Slavovsky. Hi River, did you see the Prince of Wales out with the Duchess of Edinburgh? This is a pairing I didn't know I wanted. I saw videos of Prince William introducing Sophie as my aunt, the Duchess of Edinburgh. I like that he shows her respect and prefaces her official title with the seemingly more important title to him, that of aunt. Their good, warm relationship was evident to me in that one line. Well, it's amusing, isn't it, Ivy Slavovsky? And thank you for your question and comment. Yes, I did see them. Yes, I did see them. And wasn't it heartwarming? Wasn't it jolly? And wasn't it lovely to see them paired together as they were? Quite unusual. Not unseen, but quite unusual. Lovely it was. It's hard to think of her as his aunt in many ways, even if it is only by marriage, simply because they often appear to be of a similar generation, don't they? Sophie is 18 years William's senior. Edward is 19 years his senior. And Prince Edward is 16 years the King's junior. Yes, 16 years between the two of them. So quite a gap. The late Queen Elizabeth was 37 years old when she pushed that one out, the last of the brood. And so there is a slightly smaller age gap there between Catherine and William, Sophie and Edward. But yes, one could almost have mistaken them for a couple, but they looked splendid together, they looked handsome, and they did everybody proud. It is so important in this moment in time to show unity between the houses. We hear about Clarence House and Kensington Palace and Buckingham Palace and the offices, the various departments representing all the heads of the household. We need to hear about these familial relationships within the family, these dynamics, and we need to see them on occasion. Yes, we get to see them at many group activities, but something like this, the pairing of William and Sophie, for example, is heartwarming for us, isn't it, for those who enjoy royalty. One could imagine Catherine, for example, out on the arm of the Duke of Kent. How wonderful would that be? A real elder of the family with Catherine. These pairings could be very interesting, and they could illustrate to the public a closeness that we don't always see and that we're not always privy to. I think it is going to be increasingly important to show these more junior members of the royal family that they are cherished and valued, because they are largely unsung heroes of monarchy that prop it up with their pressing of the flesh, with their ribbon-cutting appearances, with their luncheons, with their charities, patronages, and with their lack of ability to merchandise and commercialise for themselves and devote their lives to royal duty and service for those who are working members, and even those who are not working members officially, such as the Beatrices and Eugenies. It is vital that they are appreciated in public from time to time, but also in private, and I very much hope that William and Catherine are recognising that. I am sure they are, but letting the other members of the family know that they are appreciated and cherished, because they shouldn't be taken for granted. It would not behoove them to take these members of the family for granted. And as for William, his behaviour is so impeccable, and I believe that the reason that I have seen a change in him, a maturing, if you will, and since all of this nonsense with his brother and the sissy-in-law evolved, I believe I have seen a bolstering of his own maturity and a new sense of purpose. It was there before, but it's almost as if it has been invigorated within him. And I believe that is because he has a healthy spiritual life, and that's not to say overly religious, although they do attend church, but not devout in the same way as Charles and the late Queen, as far as I know. But I believe that he does have a spiritual life, and he has relationships with great spiritual advisors, including many Christian ones, members of the Church of England. And it is this spiritual life that he has that helps him bring a balance to his work, to his family life, and set boundaries. And I think that was very evident with his response to all the dramas over the last few years. Very evident. It is encouraging to see his strength, and it is heartwarming to see him out and about with his auntie Sophie. So yes, I took great pleasure in seeing the pairing. I encourage more, I urge more from time to time. Just a little drop in, and amuse-bouche, if you will, for those of us that like to follow royalty. Just, ooh. It's not the most stunning, unusual thing in the world, is it, the scenario to see a family member popping out with somebody that isn't their spouse? But it actually has raised eyebrows in the press. Delighted, pleased eyebrows. So let's have a bit more of it. And let's see them working together as a network, a fabric, if you will, a lace over this framework of royalty. I think it was absolutely lovely to see, and I'm glad that you did too, Ivy Slavovsky. Ivor Big One says, Dear River, did you see the photograph of Prince Harry posing with cabin crew on American Airlines? He appeared to leave his memoir as a gift for the flight attendant. I would love to hear your thoughts on this behaviour. Is it royal? Well, he ain't royal no more, is he? Not in my estimation, so who cares? Well, he's toting that ducal title, so he better behave himself. Yes, I saw the photographs of Harry posing with a flight attendant, cabin crew. And if he was asked to pose, because I don't know if he asked the young chap or the young chap asked him, if he was asked to pose, then he wouldn't be the only one in history that's done it and does it, and many members of the royal family would be too gracious to refuse such a thing. Many of them are happy to do it. My problem is more with the slipping in standards in this world. Once upon a time, cabin crew and flight attendants had the most glamorous job in the world. It was considered the height of luxury travel. Of course, I'm going back a few decades, but the repercussions of this privileged role, as it was seen, still stand to this day. I have one friend in particular, a childhood friend, who worked as cabin crew, worked his way up, flight attendant, became had a more managerial role, and then I think went on to do some piloting, but took great pride in professionalism and still takes great pride being a professional. And it would be horrifying for him to even consider approaching a customer, be it first class, business class, or trash bag economy, or peasants and paupers class, whatever it is, my dear. Whatever it was, there would have been no mingling of that kind, and wouldn't be to this day. Now, I certainly don't mean to disparage this young chap that had the selfie taken. Holden Patton is the name of this young chap. He seems like a very nice young man from what I can ascertain. It's not personal towards him, and for all I know, Prince Harry might have instigated the entire affair. I don't put anything past him. It's the culture. It is the culture. This is now acceptable. To take photographs with your passengers, be them celebrities, royalty, pseudo-royalty or not, and plaster it on Instagram, which was, I would imagine, is done with Harry's blessing, because incidentally, a spare copy of Spare was left for this young chap. It's the standards slipping that I bemoan. What has society come to? What has society come to? Where you have to wield it with such vulgarity over Instagram. Oh, we've got a prince on the plane. There are other airlines where this would certainly not fly to this day. And I'm talking many of the Middle Eastern airlines. My favourite airline is JAL. I love Japanese airlines. Their staff are exemplary. Some of their food is too. But the very idea, just the thought wouldn't even flash in their mind even if the late Queen Elizabeth was resurrected from the dead and walked in, the thought wouldn't cross their mind to either approach her, unless it was asking if she needed anything, to hand her a pillow, to show her where the lavatory is, the Privy Purse, whatever it was, to take a photograph, I don't know. But as I say, I don't know who indulged who in this circumstance. But how has it come to this? Selfies. Or if somebody else took the photograph, which I think they did actually from memory, so somebody else sees. I think they should call, you have selfies and somebody else sees. Well, in this case, it was a somebody else see. Could have been the Duchess of Sussex, couldn't it? Mystery solved! Mystery solved! It was Meghan that took the photo. And it was Meghan that was the mystery passenger who put the Harry tome in the flight attendant's bag while he wasn't looking. This will shift a few more. You'll put it on Instagram, Harry, we know. Of course, I should. The penny should have dropped earlier, shouldn't it, my love? But if it was Harry travelling alone, well, the mind boggles as to why he would be carting around a great big hardback book. On a return flight, one could understand if he wanted to brush up on his truth versus the truth versus the art of memoir while he was on his way to the court case and the trial. But he was returning, so there wasn't much need to brush up. So what was he doing with it, lugging around in his hand luggage? Could he really or possibly have sunk to the level where he plotted and planned this PR stunt, and Holden Patton was just an incidental in this entire affair? This young chap, this flight attendant, Holden Patton. It sounds like a rug textile, doesn't it, or a type of wallpaper. Holden Patton. Was he just an incidental, used for merching purposes? The other reason that Harry might have looked quite happy with the entire situation was the fact that it proved to the world that he flew commercial. Photographic evidence, without him making the point himself. Somebody else made the point for him, that he flew commercial. Another possibility could be that he was in cahoots with American Airlines, and that was an agreement at their intimation. There are many different possibilities in this game of confusion, but it is most certainly a game, isn't it, my dears? Most certainly a game. A comment now from somebody called Mark, who does not necessarily hold the same opinion as I do about Catherine, but I welcome all views and opinions, so long as they don't berate me for having mine. And you are very respectful, Mark, so respectfully I read your comment. Kate is no nicer than Meghan. Kate has the protection of the firm, making sure all her nasty bits are kept under control, nipped in the bud. Let's not forget how likeable Harry was when he was protected by the firm. They all have to be told how to be nice. Kate has such hard eyes. There is a coldness and a hardness to Kate that I do not like. Well, I would say that the word nice and the adjective nice and the concept of nice ain't all that nice, to be honest with you, my dear. It gives me a bit of a headache. I'd prefer someone to be a bit of a staunch character with a steely backbone. And I'd prefer them to be generally and decently good. And that doesn't mean pious or virtuous, but good and decent. Now, I've been convinced through their behaviours over the years that both William and Catherine are good. And from goodness comes incidental such as kindness, such as niceness on occasion, but nicety for me is not anywhere near the top of the list. The word nice wouldn't really spring to my lips, first of all, when you're talking about an Anne, for example, a Princess Royal. Now, I happen to know that she can be extremely nice and very cosy, but it's not something that is naturally associated with her. I happen to know that the Duchess of Gloucester is a terribly nice woman, but somebody told me in the comments the other day, they made a similar comment to you, Marky dear, and they said, why does the Duchess of Gloucester always look as if she has the most evil eyes in the world? I hadn't really thought about it, but I took a look, a glance, and I happened to glance on a day when she had bloodshot eyes. I could see what you mean, my dear, but it's all a question of perception, isn't it? How we are receiving this information. Many people thought that the late Queen Elizabeth was very cold and indifferent and not especially nice. Actually, when I was growing up and not taking an especial interest in the Queen, I've always loved her and admired her, but my impression of her was of a coldness, of an indifference, and I think it was a fair summation to make as somebody who wasn't fascinated with the goings-on behind the scenes. But I like the fact that William and Catherine are not especially known for nice. Loads of my viewers will think they're nice, and much of the wider world, but I would rather that people see them and find them focused, efficient and decent. And then the other things that come along with it are incidentals. Nice is the kind of word that you would associate with Harry or Meghan, for example, if you are a fan of them. Oh, they're so nice, they're wonderful, they bake cookies, he hangs out with veterans, and they do all these nice things. Getting her chauffeur to hand out lunch pails to the homeless, making it a sort of show of the virtues, of the kindness, to make them nice. We're nice people. J.R. Mooringer comes to see us, and we lavish him with praise in the guest house. Is it unfair of me to put them down for having these so-called good qualities, or is it merely the fact that it gives me a headache and makes my teeth itch when they make such a show of it? I don't want a show made out of nicety, because nicety should be something natural, not something to be opportune. I would rather an icy type over a politicianesque or presidential or prime ministerial approach. I don't want a politician making nice. I want a royal getting on with the job. A royalty can be icy, can be steely, even maybe cold, but generally the fabric of that royalty must be decent, and I believe we have decency. Also, my dear, I don't know where you are writing your comment from. Your name is Mark, so I'm presuming you are part of the Anglosphere, but I'm not sure. You might even be English, but I would say a part of that coldness, you see, is perhaps some old-fashioned English reserve. And I don't want to use that as an excuse to justify any sort of behaviour, but it can justify a lot of it. There is a reserve, and I think there is a natural shyness, especially in Catherine, that can come across as aloofness. David Plumpton left a comment about the remarks of Graydon Carter, who is the former editor of Vanity Fair of 25 years, a Canadian, and he had some rather harsh words for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Well, David Plumpton said, Graydon Carter has spoken out, saying, has been and never was, will regret icing their families. Do you agree with him? Well, what Graydon Carter actually said was, and I will quote him, in Britain, if you take away the royal family, it becomes like a small Middle Eastern country. It's like the magic United Kingdom. I love it when things go wrong for them. When things go right, it's boring. Harry and Meghan are just fascinating concepts. They've done something they will live to regret, which is their children have no relatives. They have no cousins that they see or uncles and aunts, and they don't see grandparents except for one. That will come back to haunt them at a certain point. Well, David Plumpton, do I agree with Graydon Carter? Will they regret icing their families? It depends which way the cards fall, but I say probably not. Probably not, because I do not believe that they have the self-awareness or the self-realization skills to be able to acknowledge their regrettable behaviour. They are so self-righteous, unbelievably so. sanctimonious. They are pseudo-victims, eternal victims, pseudo-virtuous. They strike me almost as if they consider themselves martyrs for a cause, martyrs to rehauling the institution, the firm, the British press, the world's media. Martyrs for a cause. Now, I understand icing family members when necessary. Many of you will have iced loved ones, family members, as well as friends, so I understand that when it is unavoidable, it has to be done. And I also understand very keenly that friends and communities can bring about stronger bonds than blood ties and blood relatives. Some have larger, more extended families than others. Some are focused more around a nucleus. Parents, grandparents, perhaps a cousin or two, an aunt or uncle. It's always sad when those relationships break down, but they break down even sometimes with the very best of intentions on both sides or on one side. They do break down, but when you have a loving family member, such as King Charles, and for the purpose of answering this question, I'm not going to discuss the Markle side of the family, but when it comes to the royal family and King Charles, the grandfather, who has been deprived of a relationship with his grandchildren, whatever the Duke of Sussex's feelings, he claims that he still loves his father very much. We know that he feels that Meghan was dissed by the king, and she was, deservedly so, rightfully so. But he's taken umbrage with that. He can't bear to allow him to be grandfather, in the true sense of the word, to Archie and Lily. Well, when you have a loving member of the family and someone with the potential to be a loving grandpapa, as King Charles is, and when you have such potential for a fabulous addition to their beautiful life in Montecito, but the chance of a fabulous addition, a fairy tale edition of castles and beauty and magical moments throughout this kingdom, time spent with the loved ones here. It is such a waste, and it is also a waste of what I call twinkly eyes, because no matter who in your life adores you and loves you, and many of us are surrounded by cherished friends and associates and colleagues, best friends for life, only your parents and grandparents give you a particular look if you're from a loving home, a loving family. And you all know the look. Nobody will be as pleased to see you as a loving grandma or grandpa. For those of us that have had the luxury and the privilege of having them. And parents, of course, to some degree. But it is a look that should be cherished, nurtured, because when those lights diminish and go out and there aren't as many pairs of eyes looking at you with that kind of love, it is something that can never be regained. It is part of the magic of life. And to deprive Archie and Lilibet of growing up, developing a relationship with that gaze, with that twinkle in their grandpa's eye that you see he has with Louis, Charlotte and George. It's heartbreaking because it is so unnecessary. Even if he can't work out his issues with his father, there's no reason to deprive an entire relationship. Will Archie and Lily grow up lonely? I don't think they are especially at risk of growing up lonely. And for one thing, if they have never had the love of a large family, it's not something that they will necessarily miss or recognise that they miss because they simply don't know it, and they are obviously creating a family of sorts of their own in Montecito. So no, I don't especially think that it destines them to a lonely fate. And you can live in the middle of a city, such as London, in the middle of buzz and traffic and hoi polloi and a million friends and glittering parties, and be lonely too. So I don't think it matters in that respect as to whether they will be lonely or not. That comes from the spirit and is subjective to your experience, to what your experience and what you know. But we know, and anyone that has grown up with a handful of grandparents rather than one knows that they are missing out on a great deal of wisdom, of humour, of affection, great fondness. It's very heartbreaking. Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate your company and I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care and toodle pip.